last week we kind of finished up. Or last time we were together, we kind of finished up in Old Piltony, which is in the northeast. So it's like it used to be, the claim for the most northerly distillery on the mainland, which we know Wolfsburn kind of took that over. But so this one looks really nice. As we're going to Orkney, and if you're going from Old Piltony, you do go to John O'Groats, which is the most northern point on the British mainland, and then from there, basically take a couple of hour ferry across to Orkney, and you kind of come to the main town. There's got the capital of Orkney, called Kirkwall, and just beside there is where Scapa and Highland Park are. But the first one we were going to go and visit was Scapa. We were saying we'd go down there. And it's got some really interesting things about Scapa to itself. It's the younger of the two distilleries now, and I like that, Ryan, you're suggesting that it's the most southern distillery on Orkney, the Orkney mainland. Since Highland Park is the most northern distillery in the British Isles from there. But and then this was a side note, Orkney has been owned, it's kind of been part of Scotland for about 600 years. Prior to that, it was Viking, and the reason I'm saying that is because it gives very much to its Viking Norse type roots from there. But Scapa, the younger of the two distilleries, it was more like the 1800s. It was opened up, and the type of the interesting thing about that, we always kind of know, like when we're talking about the islands, we're usually talking about some peat quite often, and the reason for the peat being that they didn't have any trees to burn to dry the barley. But Scapa itself is actually a non-peated whiskey when it's doing things, and so generally now it's kind of had a bit of a checkered history, opening up, being closed, opening up again, and the one we've got to try just now, I think you said we're going to do Scapa 16 is the one we're going to have a little taste of, which is we can have the music of the angels. It's disappearing because you can no longer buy this one. See, what I really love is the fact that you bought your dad a couple of bottles of these, Ryan.
Well, what happened was my dad got into wine first, and we can't have that, right? And so I kind of started talking to him a bit about whiskey some years ago, and he got enthusiastic about it. And I noted online at around 2015 or 2016 that Scapa was actually discontinuing this bottle. And so he was like, oh, investment opportunity. So he went and bought four bottles of Scapa 16, and apparently the military PX in Fort Hood, near where he lives, because he's ex-military, they sell, apparently the person who stocks the whiskey there is a connoisseur of sorts, and they actually had a large amount of Scapa 16. And the thing about military exchanges is you do not pay sales tax.
Oh my goodness.
Stuff there is often at a significant discount compared to off base as well. So the dude's sitting on three sealed bottles of Scapa 16, and I got a little bottle of his open bottle of Scapa 16 now. So
so I'll put up. So there's the Scapa 16 label. It looks like that.
Yeah.
But we'll have that one just now, and you can see mine's as well depleted as well.
It'll soon be gone. I think it's probably appreciated more than my 401k in terms of value.
So actually, I have a question about that because I don't know. So I know that Scapa had, like Gary was saying, a checkered past, right? They closed and then they reopened, and they closed and then they reopened. Are they closed again?
No, they're open.
Yeah, they're open. They only have one Scotch they bottle right now, which is a non-age statement. And so that kind of leads me to believe that someone like Johnny Walker is buying up most of their stuff and putting it into blends or something like that. I think that happened with Ardbeg as well. It's odd because as well as Ardbeg is known now, they were once shuttered for a period of years. And the reason why they concentrate on no age statement whiskeys like the Corey Varekian and they come out with a new release every year is because they don't have the slack in terms of old barrels to bottle something with an age statement over 10 years. And so I suspect that Scapa is the same way because when they reopened in 2004, they offered a 14-year instead of a 12-year because there was no 12-year-old whiskey, just 14-year-old whiskey because of the age gap. And then they added the 16 into the lineup by just letting it sit in those casks another extra 2 years. And I think it was 2016, early 2016, when they were like, no, we just don't have enough sauce in order to release something with an age statement anymore. So
yeah. So I'd imagine that will come.
I read that that's a thing that's happening to several of the islands, actually, with COVID. I want to say I think it's the head distiller of Lafroig was talking about how just like there's production is just lost, and there's just nothing they can do about it because they had to shut down for the pandemic.
So let's go on and taste the Scapa.
Well, a couple of more notes about the Scapa.
Yeah, please.
That I found. I was looking at the bottle at my dad's house, and I noticed this is bottled at 40% ABV, not typically a 43. Like if we take a look at the Highland Park 18, it's bottled at 43, and I find that most scotches that I've seen are bottled at 43 or 46. And the other thing is that I found out that this was actually both caramel colored and chill filtered as well.
Oh.
Yep. So they're doing everything to it.
Yeah, it's just been turned every which way but loose, I think. But that said, I remember loving this scotch the last time I tried it, and let's see if there is any exception here.
It's a very smooth, like.
All of this is kind of a very straightforward whiskey. It is first fill bourbon barrels only. There's no sherry, no other chicanery.
Exactly.
With the barrels.
That's a good example of that. Now, Chance, you've asked in the past about good ones, and this is a good reference whiskey for that. They're very much respected as a distillery from the side. It's very much a straightforward whiskey. They haven't succumbed to some of the modern, we'll call it the modern things of having lots of different casks and everything happening to them. They've kind of kept with their traditions. In that part, I think the 40% is, now obviously we know it's the water bringing it down there, so there's probably a little bit of economics getting played there on the island. If you think about how far north it is, there's access to everything when they want to transport things. That bit lovely. This was a lovely one in the nose, like now heather. A little bit.
Interesting thing about Scotland, this
honey.
is so lightweight for an area that gets its water primarily from sources that are naturally peated.
Yeah. So there will be a trace amount of peat in here just because of the water. More is that a flavour, but it's not enough to change it. Particularly like
they don't dry their barley. They don't dry their barley over a peated fire or anything like that.
Correct.
But the water itself has a natural amount of peat in it, and they actually pipe that water from the source just to avoid it running through more peat. I think this is some marvelously light whiskey.
It's delicious.
Especially when we counterpose it next to the slightly heavier Highland Park that we're going to be enjoying later. I would like to have had a bottle of the Scapa Standard, the Skyran, I think it's called, just to compare and contrast. Gary, do you have a bottle of that handy?
Yeah, I've got a bottle here.
Well, what have you there?
It so happens.
Yeah.
It so happens I didn't have a bottle. I have to open it because I'm usually drinking the 16, so.
What a coinky-dink.
For this one. So it's this one. That's the standard state one they're doing.
The Orcadian, or does that say Orcadian? Is that
Orcadian.
They call themselves Orcadians. They don't consider themselves Scots first. They consider themselves like Orkney people first, right?
That's right. If you're from the island, you'll call yourself Orcadian. So we said that one.
So if you're from Isla, then are you an island?
Actually, do you know what? This younger version, it's actually fruitier. The 16 is really smooth and it's very, very classy and silky. This younger one is actually it's right off the nose that you're getting hit with like a lot of like fruit. There's no peat or anything in it, so it's a really.
That's what they said on the site when I was looking them up. It said hint of tropical fruit, citrus.
Yeah.
And coastal heather.
It is. You need to try it. Yeah, you need to try it. It's actually that's the first time I've actually tried it in a long time. So I've been drinking the 16, and the 16 is like very refined next to it. It's got a little bit of honey notes. Now it's got just classic influences, but this one is like a little fruit bomb. Oh, this is interesting.
What else can we talk about in terms of Orkney itself?
Well, how does
are there any other distilleries on Orkney, the other islands? Because the biggest island is surprise called mainland, right?
Yeah.
Go figure.
Yeah, that's what else we've got now. There's just the two distilleries at the moment. So I was interested. The island is just to the north of it again, which is like a couple more hours. The Shetland, which is really the most northern island of Scotland, because Scotland's got like about 3,000 or 4,000 islands around it. You just never know about these like small little islands, and not all of them are populated. And Orkney is made up of like I think it's like quite a few around Orkney as well. you've got the mainland and all the small ones. But as we said earlier, like there's been part of Scotland for 600 years, and there actually, so instead of saying slange, so there they don't say that they use more the Norwegian or the Viking influence of that, and so it says skål. It says skål is what they'll be doing when they're doing that one there. But we can maybe do that later on when we finish up.
And in fact, Highland Park has rebranded themselves as sort of the Viking malt, haven't they, over the past couple of years? Because I have an older bottling. We're not going to switch to Highland Park yet, but this is the older bottling of the 18, and the newer bottling of the 18 has like this kind of like, you know, Led Zeppelin immigrant song kind of Viking iconography on it, you know. And it kind of cracked me up to look at just leaning into their heritage, you know. But that said, our Orkney isn't that far off the coast of mainland Scotland, isn't it? Is it?
Yeah, it's only about 30-40 miles off. And but put into context, if you think you always see Great Britain on its own in Scotland, but Norway is only about 40-50 miles away. Like that, so Norway's not that far away from Scotland. So Scotland and Norway are quite close. Now Scotland's very high up in close to the Arctic Circle, but because it's got, now we've talked about that, the Gulf Stream brings warm water up the side across the Atlantic, and so Scotland itself, its temperatures are quite temperate. It's just a lovely whiskey from there, a nice one, and hats off to your dad for having some of those bottles put away.
Yeah.
Next time in Texas, Nate, come and see him. Next time in Texas, I'll be like, come and introduce myself. Hello, and I really like Scapa.
So I have to toss in my favorite Orkney fact is that was where in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, that's where Frankenstein went after he abandoned his monster to make her a bride. He like fucked right off to Orkney, I guess to have some whiskey, and then he left Orkney. He dumped all his lab equipment in the ocean because he was like, "This is really bad what I did," and he went to Ireland which he called a wretched place with traces of civilization. I guess he didn't like triply distilled whiskeys. Old Dr. Frankenstein. So that was my very favorite.
Yeah, didn't you know? There you go. And thinking, who would have thought that Frankenstein from Scotland? That side there.
See, now he's always going to have a Scottish accent for me.
And then since you've got the other one, Bram Stoker, and where do you think Dracula was based? Even though it's like Transylvania and all that, where do you think it was written?
Where?
A little factoid. Scotland as well.
Really?
And it was inspired by some stories in Scotland, even though they've got it set over in Transylvania. So I'll let you look that one up. It's a good.
I did not know that.
Yeah, Scotland's home to a lot of these little, like, particularly the month of October is a good Scottish month, from the amount of things that kind of come from there. Now the headless the headless horseman that you guys have very much as a northeastern story. If you actually read into behind it, Robert Burns, the poet of Scotland, he wrote some stories about Jack O'Lantern, and you'll see, if you read some of those, you'll see some interesting ones there. But anyway, that's enough about Scotland.
I do love Robert Burns, I would say.
See, all the gloomy, rainy weather is good for creativity.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't have anything to do except sit inside and sit next to the fire and drink some peated scotches and read and write.
Yeah, exactly. Read and write, and then lots of great stuff like that.
Picture giant men with like electrical tubes in their neck. It's exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So Orkney has Scapa, just fantastic, of course. But Gary, you've got a pretty massive Highland Park collection, if I'm not mistaken, also on the island of Orkney.
That's correct. Yep. And so we move.
What a segue. Good job.
Excellent segue there, Chad. So anyway, if we move to Highland Park, so we're just like a mile or further north, into a half a mile, about a kilometre, into Kirkwall, the town, and the Highland Park, very much beloved by everybody. I mean, geez, anybody who's listening to this will say Highland Park, yep, we got you. We've been drinking that for years, love this stuff. The good thing about Highland Park, it says Highland Park, but the question you'd ask me, Chance, is probably, it's not in the Highlands, Gary, it's on an island that's not like there, and it's got some stories behind the name from it. They're called Highland Park. It was really the guy that owned it. He wanted to name his estate after like some lands in Highlands, and actually called it his Highland Park up there in Orkney. So it kind of got that name, and not a very like Norse type name as you would kind of expect from up there. Illicitly making whiskey, and they kind of say illicitly in 1798, and this actually touches on one of the whiskies we're going to have, which will be good, is Magnus. So obviously of Nordic type descent. He was a well-known smuggler in the place, and apparently he was illicitly making the whiskey moonshine on the island at the time, and that's kind of what is kind of like the origin story of Highland Park from there. But it was actually another guy, David Robertson, that's kind of officially assigned to. So they'll have on that, if you've got pictures of Highland Park, and you could probably pop one in, you get the front gate, and it says 1798 on it, but it never actually got its proper license till 1825 from there, because it was illicit. So basically it was illicit up to that point there, and who knows how many years before that. So for this one, we've gone to there. We're going to talk about peat. There's going to be lots of good stuff, but which one do you want to start with?
You mentioned it. Let's start with the Magnus.
Okay. So the Magnus is one that was kind of done with a nod to Magnus himself. That the story, the founder story, so to speak. There, lovely bottle.
What do we know about
this one?
See, look at that Viking iconography, man.
Yeah, that iconography, amazing, isn't it?
Stuff. Yeah, they have bottle design.
Yeah, their marketing is crazy.
So what do we know about the Magnus? What is the hook here with this? What's the deal? It's a no age statement, and I think this was aged exclusively in first fill sherry.
Yeah, no. The one thing about Highland Park is, from particularly 2004, they kind of went to an exclusively sherry house. So then you've got all those sherry flavours on it, and then we're going to talk about the peat part, which goes per million. We'll get a bit, not so much. No, a lot of time we talk about that for Isla particularly, but for Orkney we don't really talk about it much. But what the traditional Highland Park one, it's about 20%, so it's 20 now ppms is what they're talking about, and what they're taking is of the barley quantity that they're using, it's about 20% of it is getting like peated, and then they're mixing it in with the rest of the barley which comes from the mainland. So they're like they're malting some of their own and then mixing it in with malted barley that's coming from the mainland. So it's a 20% ppm, which gives something in there. But more importantly, the thing this gets us to talk about, I'm really excited, is we were talking about Old Piltney. We talked about like now that it has a very slight now peat content to it that they use for the drying, whereas here Highland Park is like the first, we'll call it, of the island visits we'll probably do, and having like this 20% ppm, which is about half the level of the Islay ones, lends itself to actually talking about peating a bit more. So the peat is that decomposed vegetation that's left for over thousands of years. And then then one question we could ask ourselves is, what are the different types of peat? So you've got that mainland peat, we've known that when we were on Speyside there was some peated ones there, and then you will always know about Islay, like that was really strong there, and then you've got Orkney. Now the reason I'm saying all three of them is you've got three different types of peat there. The mainland one has got a lot of trees in it, and so it's got a lot of smokiness that's driven with the trees, and it's got what's this thing called? I wrote the thing down because I couldn't remember. It's got lignin. That's right. So lignin from trees comes in, and that's actually probably why it's more smokier when it comes to the peats like that. Whereas we know Islay is more like maritime type vegetation. So that's bringing things in, and that kind of gets something called creosote, which gives it a tar type one, and get a lot of like coastal type flavours to that one. The interesting one now when you come to Orkney, the peat there is about 4,000 years old, the peat they use for the process. So it's been lying there like getting squashed and decomposing for 4,000 years. But it's more like a inland on the island, but the island didn't have any trees, so it doesn't have as much lignin, and it's not like as much maritime vegetation as Islay's using. So this one's actually it's more made up of just sphagnum moss and heather. So the island's got an abundance of heather, and so those ones coming together when they're decompressing. So this peat is a different type of peat that if you were tasting it to the mainland ones into Islay, and that one's giving it a bit more of like some. It's a lighter, more different flavors, like a heathery type flavor, but maybe even like a lavender type smells with some aromatic things that are a little bit different compared to the other peats. So with that, now at the back of our mind, let's now go and like start smelling the Magnus.
Oh, I couldn't help myself. I've been Oh, it's. So
what you get? So sherry cask with a peat. So let's think about that's the two things we're thinking about here.
It's also 40% ABV, I believe. Is that right?
Let me check my bottle here. Yep, 40% ABV.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, interestingly, like you were talking about, at the back of the bottle, they say "Skull."
Huh.
Yeah.
Fact check.
Oh, yeah. Fact check. Yeah.
Another interesting thing I found out about this is that the casks are bourbon casks that they stored sherry in.
Right.
That is what the whiskey is aged in, not actual ex-sherry casks.
Ex-sherry.
Yeah, but it has. They just took some ex-bourbon casks, loaded it with sherry, and let it splash around in there for a bit to get that sherry note and influence.
So what type of things are you getting from this, guys?
I'm not gonna lie, I love it. I'm getting like a savory smoke. It's very subtle. It's a very, very subtle nose, but like a salty smoke, like bacon almost.
You got a bacon smoke? Let's see. Yeah, I'm getting more of a perfumed smoke. Things over the top, isn't it?
The sherry is mingling with the peatiness, I think. It's a smell I really love, but I think this is more accessible than, like you said, Gary, than your typical Islay will be.
Yeah. This was a lovely one. And another thing as well is Highland Park have probably won Whiskey of the Year more times than any other Scottish whiskey.
I like how understated this actually is. The sherry isn't punching me in the face. The smoke isn't punching me in the face. I think it's a nice marriage of the two.
Yeah, this is probably what, like an 8-year-old, I'd imagine. And it's an age statement, but I'd imagine with 7, 8 years old will have it. So you're getting a lot of this, the raw alcohol come through. And at 40 ABV, it's not like it's lovely. It's nicely balanced.
There's nothing assertive about it.
Yeah.
Which is odd, given that it is lightly peated, but it feels. I won't say that to me it seems watery on the finish. There's just nothing tremendously assertive about the bottle, the dram, I think, to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
This versus the 12. I wonder which one would taste. Do you have a bottle of the Highland Park 12 there, Gary?
Oh, I definitely do. Where do we stop? I've got the 12, the 15, the 16, a whole bunch of them. But I don't. Well, the 12 is like the quintessential. It's a bit like the Macallan equivalent of the 12. That in the range of the Highland Park, their 12 is kind of like that balanced one. It's got the sherry, it's got the heather notes, it's come from the peat, from that, and then from there they've derived a lot of different things. But I think I'll just stay to these ones here like just now, because that means I have to get up and go fish out. And if I get started, I'll bring the 12, the 15, the 16.
Okay, let's not get.
And then we'll get these, yeah. That. So I'll stay focused on this just now. So Magnus, this is a nod to the original guy. Lovely, you were saying iconography is great on it from there. Anything else, guys?
By the way, the 10-year-old is called Viking Scars. The 12-year-old is Viking Honor. The 18-year is the Viking Pride. In case anybody out there is wondering, they've really leaned in to the Viking thing here.
Yeah, why not?
Now I need to get a bottle of whiskey called Viking Scars. Like, how do I not have a bottle of whiskey called Viking Scars?
Their marketing is working on you.
Yeah.
On their webpage, their whiskey's divided into the core range, which is all their aged whiskeys, as well as the Magnus and the Dragon Legends. Whatever that is. And there's a number of special editions, and also my favorite ones when I'm stuck at an airport to see what duty-free only bottles there are of various whiskeys. One of my favorite things to see.
Yeah, they've got quite a few just duty-free ones. It's lovely what they've got. The Highland range.
Oh man, so I'm definitely getting some peat, but sort of like you were talking, and maybe you just got inside my head there, Gary. But I'm not getting the smoky parts of the peat that I would get from a Lafroig or a Lagavulin or an Ardbeg.
Yeah, exactly, Chance. The way I would describe that is I'm not getting that oiliness. I'm not getting the oiliness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not getting that kind of like the sticking to your tongue kind of like almost unctuousness.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Creole.
That
Yeah, the
finish.
Creole. So yeah. Now this one's more good. It's more like a lighter type one. You're getting what it is. It's more fragrant. Is what you're getting. There's a little more. I think that's. And if you had like a bunch of heather beside you, I'd make you rub the heather and smell the heather, and I think you would maybe get some of the influence of that.
Smells like.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. So
it smells like whiskey.
Yeah, just imagine. Yeah. So one day when you get some heather, you rub the heather and you say, "Oh,
right.
Highland Park." Like that.
That's so interesting because like when I think about peat and peat smoke in a whiskey, like I imagine like my clothes after I go camping, right? Like you pull them out of your bag when you get home and you're like, whoa, that's a campfire. And that's, I mean, it's one of my favorite smells. I've got attachments to camping with my dad as a kid and such. But this, I get some of the interesting aspects of peat, but without that campfire smoke. And I'm thinking that's the heather that you're talking about. That's fascinating. Interesting.
Yeah. So you have to try some more for that. So with asking some more, we're going to move on. So you're suggesting we try 18 next?
Yeah, let's do that.
You were saying the Valkyrie is going to be quite in that flavour profile. So the 18, they start to, a lot of time we talk about the aging, but the 18 in this one is really interesting because you're going from that 12, which was that line, this then starts to mellow out a little bit of the peatiness. So now you're getting the sherry cask is starting to come in as well. So the 18 is a nice example of that sherry mixed with the peat as we're doing it. So if anything, I can't wait to Ryan to try this compared to the one we just had, the Magnus. When you take the 18, just take it to your nose, and now the sherry, you're going to get, whoa, I've got a sherry cask now. And this is the sherry back to home.
That's my bomb. That's the bomb right there.
Yeah, isn't it?
Love that smell. It's the fruitiness, the dried fruits. It's a delicious smell.
So imagine that. This is the one that won. This has won a lot of awards just because of that balance. It's that aromatic peat. Then you're putting the sherry cask in.
Oh yeah.
This is delicious. I mean, this is what is considered now. This is like the real marriage of two different ones coming together.
It almost feels like the Magnus is a watered down version of this 18, in my opinion, because not only is this a higher ABV at 43, I think I think the Magnus is at 40. This just feels more developed to me. Yeah, I mean, this is sophisticated. This is just lovely, isn't it? I mean, this is why this one, but you get like the snobbery of all like what's people's favourite whiskies, but the Highland Park quite often comes in. If people are given a top 5, Highland Park's always going to be there as one of their like top 5 favourite whiskies, because nobody gets pinned down to just one.
Oh man, I'm smelling like fruit leather and it's just lovely.
I'm feeling that the peat is also more predominant here than it is in the Magnus.
Yeah.
On the nose, particularly.
On the nose, yeah, particularly on the nose. This is where that for me that heathery one and I just absolutely love it. I just thought I could just like sit and finish this bottle and not drink anything else. It's lovely.
It's absolutely delicious. This has all of the good things I like about a peated Islay whiskey, and without having the commitment of an 8-hour-long finish like our Peg Corverekian.
Yeah. Actually, let's talk about the finish. What type of finish are you getting for?
Just a satisfyingly smoky, but with sweet overtones that are married. There's a marriage there, and they both are continuing onward. Whereas if I say, again, going for me, the gold standard of the Islay whiskeys like Corverekian, in terms of peatiness, the smoke in that particular one overwhelms everything else on the finish. And it is a superbly long finish on the quarry, but it's not as pleasant a ride as this.
Yeah, that's a nice long finish, isn't it? You could just that warmth, it's everything there. You see the whole way. That's not delicious.
This is truly fantastic.
Yeah.
Ironically, so I did a tasting with my dad when he came down and visited, and speaking of a long finish, so we ended with like I think Lagavulin and Lafroig, working our way up the scale. He texted me from the airport the next day and told me everything tasted like smoke. To which I was a little bit jealous because I wouldn't mind having that long of a finish.
Yeah, that's extra. Yeah.
My
He was so,
dad
yeah.
hates peated whiskies as well. He hates them.
And have you introduced them like slowly building the palate up to try them?
He's not interested in my
No.
babbling about peated whiskies.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't want to know. He
my-
doesn't. We need
my
to
feeling-
try 'em.
He was bitching about, he tried some Johnny Walker, I think, Gold, and Johnny Walker blends everything together under the sun.
Yeah.
There's usually a little bit of peated whiskey in there as well, particularly in, I think, the Gold, and especially my favorite is the green.
Yeah, the green and the black. The black, the double black, the green. Yeah, they've all got.
He just has
Good
nothing
morning.
but contempt for peated whiskeys. I don't know what his deal is.
I think we have to work in your dad.
Yeah,
I think we have to work on him. Yeah.
Gary sees a challenge.
I see a challenge here. I see how can I take a Johnny Walker man all the way up who enjoys a 16-year-old Scapa. But he's got a very refined palate. He's liking all
Well,
this.
his very favorite whiskey, his very, very favorite whiskey, I think I said this on an earlier episode of this podcast, is the Bushmill 16. That's very, very, very favorite.
Yeah, so he's liking a really light. I mean, the delicacies are the things. I mean, we're up here.
Maybe that's why he likes the Scapa so much as well. Scapa is, I think, a fairly lightweight whiskey.
Yeah. No, it's lightweight flavor-wise. Like that.
Yeah.
Let's make sure.
There you go.
I think it's the time of the day, the subtleties of it, and it's. I mean, the three of us, we really appreciate all the different ones. That's why it's hard to say which your favourite. That's what time of the day is it? What am I fancying?
So I have a question, and this is a complete topic change. Apologize.
Okay.
Okay, so we've talked about Isla, and we've talked about peat, and we've talked about how that influences the Highland Park, and then we've talked about the islands, and then we've talked about how Highland Park is named Highland Park, but not because of the Highlands and such like that. But technically, according to the Scottish Whisky Association, like it would be a Highland, because they don't recognize the islands except for Isla, which they recognize as its own, but they don't recognize the other islands. But they recognize. Yep.
You're confused. You're confused. Okay, so there's really only only about three whiskey regions: Lowlands, Highlands, right? And we just say in the islands at Islay, right? Those were really the only three that were recognised. And then what's happened over time, they get split out. Bayside got its own designation because there's so many darn distilleries in that one area. So you say, okay, fine, we're up to 4 now. So Lowlands, Highlands, and Islay got its own designation because it was just so like peated monster island. And then you've got Bayside, so you have 4. And then what's happened is people have been more and more flavours. They've been testing them out in like Orkney down through Skye, through to Arran, the islands there. They've kind of had their own separate ones. So these are just breakout groups from the Highlands. So a purist would say, well, these are all Highland whiskies. Well, yeah, they're the Highland area, but they're kind of, each of them is given their own thing. So they're sub-regions of it. So that's why we got up to about 5 different regions is what you'll kind of get to as you're going around there.
Okay.
Did I get it right? 5? Lowlands? Oh no, it's 6, because you get Campbelltown as well.
Yeah.
Like that. So you've got these like sub ones that have just got some particular, and back maybe in the 1980s and 90s about these distilleries before they started getting fancy and into all trying different casks and a lot of things like that. They were more just classic either sherry or bourbon casks that they were doing, and for the bulk of them, we're putting the whiskey into blend whiskies that we were tasting around the world, the Johnny Walkers, etc. But when then it was less of a distinction, but as more as we've started to do it, so we said, okay, fine, now we're starting to separate out, and that's when the regions mean more. Like that. But at the end of the day, it's about opening the bottle and enjoying the whiskey. So each one's you've got a general description for that region. Like we normally describe a Speyside, usually we'll say a non-peated, then you've got to get floral because it's floral and fauna type because of the land they've got there. You've got the lowlands. Think about it, it's like now just the name suggests that lowland. The water that's coming out, well, the water in Scotland's all usually normally soft water, except for the 2 distilleries that use hard water. But generally, the soft water is used in Scotland for all the whiskies. So is that doing something to it? The water you're using, and then you're using the bourbon cask. So each one's got a general. So whenever we like doing like the tastings, we'll like take people around and we'll give them like a flavour. Say, listen, generally for that region it's this. However, there's exceptions, and nowadays there's so many darn exceptions. You've kind of got more exceptions now than you've got the general for that region from that. you've got this like island type one in Orkney. We can kind of call it the start of the islands at the top. Now it's going to go down and go down the north, west portion of Scotland as well. Continue down until we get to Islay, which will be later on at one point, hopefully.
Okay, that makes sense.
Let's go to Valkyrie. The ABV is 45.9.
45, 46-ish%. Wow.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So they're getting serious with that ABV there.
That's what, a 92 proof, right?
Yeah. And the one, and it's really cool that you chose this one, Chance, because I know Chance you can select the Scotches we're going to try. It was good because this is the first in a series of 3 special Viking Legend releases. So this is a Valkyrie one there. So for Viking warriors, death was not an end, but a glorious beginning, and it began with the Valkyries. I'll just leave that. That's what it says in the back of the bottle. I didn't know that. I'm going to pour myself some of the Valkyrie.
Perhaps they made it up. I don't know.
Sorry, I love that so much. It's just what it says on the bottle.
Yes. I'll just do it with a Scottish accent.
It's not facts, Gary's facts. This is Highland Park's facts.
It's Highland Park's facts. So everybody been? Oh my goodness.
A lot of peat there.
Yeah, that's just as. Oh, this one just.
And so we say that they claim that we are now at 25 or 40% or 50% malted or.
Yeah, this one's a 50, I
barley.
think. Yeah, so this one,
20%.
Yeah, and they've aged it for what you were saying, 12 years. I've done this one. So this is like 12 years. It's going to be some serious.
Well, to be clear, it's a non-age statement, but when I bought it, it seemed to be like the 12 years. So I'm not actually sure where it lands, but.
Oh, okay. So if it's non-aged, it's probably going to, I don't know, maybe 8, 9 years old.
Threw in a splash of some new make or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
That quite good and quite peated, and I like this quite a bit. This is nice.
This is very nice. Yeah. Now this is so once more on the peat though, isn't it? A different type of peat. So it's not like that. Like in the mainland, you're going. I do that peat we can kind of describe as sometimes a meaty peat, but like the meat coming through it. And then Islay would describe that maritime. We're getting a lot of like the seaweed coming through the peat, so to speak, and the bitumen and the creosote. But this one is a different type where it's you're getting a lot of those aromatic flavors that are coming through.
Yeah,
Very
like
good.
Like, oh, sorry, I'm almost overwhelmed by how much I love this dram.
Yeah.
This is really excellent. I'm really enjoying this. Wow, what a nice dram. Not overwhelmingly peated. I think this is accessible to people who do not have Scotch experience or peated Scotch experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like mouth-wateringly good. It's savory and yet sweet also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this would be perfect as you're doing like a beginner's Scotch tasting where like to go between Highlands or Spays and Campbellton and Islay, because you start getting some peat, but you get all these other like wonderful like smooth flavors, and it's not, the overpoweringness of an Ardbeg or a Lafroig.
Yeah. And this one is really pronounced, the peat on it. Actually, it's a lot more pronounced. So that 18-year-old is like nicely balanced. This one's really pushing it.
Yeah.
Give an example of like
Agreed.
a strong,
Completely agree.
which Highland Park haven't really been pushing a lot of the time. They don't push the peat that much. They're pushing more that balance of the sherry cask with the peat. This one they push the peat.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I start to get a little bit more of that smoke again.
Yeah.
Not as much as I'll get on Islay when we get there, but like some of the smoke, some of the delicious campfire is coming in here with that peat.
Could be close to it.
Especially in comparison to like the Scapa.
Yeah. So this is like a peat that's now, as we were saying earlier. Now if we go back to like the peat styles, there's no trees in Orkney. But if you're putting a picture up of the island, you'll see it's like pretty like desolate of trees. And basically it's a windswept island. And so what they've got is just the plants. The plants they have is like the moss that will grow in these northern climates, and the heather. And what you're getting, what happens after you leave it for 4,000 years, this is what happens. You get that peat. this flavour comes through. Now when we get to Islay, it'll be like 10,000 years, but that's a totally different flavour. We'll talk about that later.
Drinking 10,000 years of history right here.
This is 4,000 years. 4,000 years for
right here.
Okay, so I just want to call that out.
And, you know, get it to the indoor glass is awesome.
More, I want to take that further, Ryan. I want to say right now we are drinking whiskey aged over the smoke of plants that were stepped on by actual Vikings. Real 4,000 years worth of history in the peat that came into this glass, and that's amazing.
Maybe some of the Vikings died in battle. Who knows?
Oh, dude, there could be Viking blood in this glass. There absolutely could.
Right here. Absolutely Viking blood in there. I can taste this courage. Delicious.
The Viking pride.
I'm half expecting Chance to step off screen and come back dressed as a Viking.
I have swords somewhere, but they're not immediately available.
This is really good. That's delicious. So we're going to finish on. We're going to finish on that one there.
Well, so I did have a finisher. Since we're doing islands, I decided to take a scotch from another island, the island of Arran.
Oh, you've gone for the Arran. Which one have you taken? Is that
the port? This is the port cask finish, and I love. This is actually a fairly young distillery. I think it didn't open until 1995 or something like that. And so the oldest expression that I could find for a while was the 14-year. And so I think now that perhaps they finally have enough juice to release like a 21-year or something like that. I'm a sucker for port cask finish. I just love that sweetness,
No, I've got mine's an 18. I'm sitting on an Arran 18. I'm just joining you.
They did have it. I have a bottle of the 14, but I don't think that they made the 18 at the time that I bought.
Yeah. I just bought it later.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm jealous of you guys' Arran, but I'm gonna finish with that Valkyrie because it's good.
Yeah, you should. Actually, but the one is actually you're probably. I mean, we're jumping to Arran, which is a totally different discussion. And why you're doing this was Ryan's not left alone. So Ryan, you're doing a port cask. Oh jeez, you make us want to do the cask discussion, but.
So this is I believe aged in bourbon and finished in port. I don't know for how long. This actually is a no age statement Scotch.
Yep.
And I admit to not looking it up. All they say on the label is that it matures in traditional oak casks over a number of years.
Yeah.
And it's finished in port wine casks. So I don't know what we can assume about that.
I'll be bourbon casks.
Yeah.
I'm in a good change.
I do have another Viking.
It was this one. It was called the Highland Park.
Fender. That's the Fender font, I think.
Yeah, that was the full. It's the full volume. This one was called. This is the one that was brought out a few years ago. Called the Highland Park full volume.
Nice.
And it was in party, and this one. And this was like the Orkney single malt with Viking soul. Oh, I like that for their marketing. This is when they were busy now changing their marketing, but this one was called full volume. What they had. So I'm gonna taste that. I've not had that in a while.
Apparently, all of the Arran malt cask finishes are 8 years in bourbon, and then some time in port cask or whatever the cask was.
So there's some similarities to the way Glenmorangie works, where they always start with the Glenmorangie original, and then they go aside from there.
Yeah.
It feels like most scotches are that way. The Long Row Red port cask is the only one I have or I've heard of that is all 9 years in port, and it is overwhelmingly port winey, and it has a port character unlike anything else that I've tried, and so I assume that most port finishes are like that, because I know the Balvenie port finish is as well like that.
Gentlemen, it has been lovely getting together and traveling through the island of Orkney, discussing all the things. I'm going to end our lovely Dram and a Blether with Skål.
Skål. You go.
Well, that completes our tasting of the Orkney Islands. Be sure to tune in next week as the adventure continues. Thank you for joining us on Dram and a Blether. And as always, Please drink responsibly.